the proceeds as a political slush fund.
Is it just politics as usual, or is there something deeper going on? I still don't know the answer.
When his crime is uncovered, Thompson dares investigators to find out where he is and who he is.
We thought we were chasing Jason Bourne. The guy was a ghost.
I can't help but wonder, who is this man?
He's a man who thinks he can remain a fugitive forever, using his own intelligence training and other people's money.
It's the mother lode. This is more money than I've ever seen in one spot.
April 16th, 2012. Security cameras roll, capturing a man as he enters a storage facility in Portland, Oregon. He was once an intelligence officer, a master of disguise who felt at home in the corridors of power. Now, beaten down after decades on the run, his life is a tangle of lies, and each step is a struggle. He's on his way to locker 646, where he stashed the secrets to his very survival. To authorities, he's known as Mr. X, a fitting name for a man cloaked in mystery.
The mystery has not been unraveled, and might be stranger than what we already know.
Dr. Patrick Bray knows that service to country involves great sacrifice. The Navy paid for him to go to medical school and sent him all over the world.
As a Navy doctor, I know firsthand some of the hardships that this works on people. You know, it's tough to be deployed if your wife's pregnant and you're not going to be there and they're having troubles at home. It's difficult.
After leaving the military, Bray practices medicine in Cleveland, Ohio. In 2007, he gets a call from a fundraiser.
I'm usually hang up right away on a telemarketer, but he said Navy, and that kept me on the phone.
Representatives of a charity called the U.S. Navy Veterans Association tell Bray they're sending care packages to troops and supporting local vets in need. They aren't asking for much, and Bray writes them 2 checks totaling $300.
Just the name was, you know, sounded legitimate. U.S. Navy veterans. Who's against that?
As Ohio Attorney General Mike DeWine will later see, Bray is just one target among thousands in a relentless telemarketing blitz.
I think most Americans have a soft spot in their heart for veterans and feel that we owe them a lot.
Claiming a history dating back to 1927, the U.S. Navy Veterans Association, or USNVA, says it has 66,000 members, 41 state chapter offices, and a headquarters in Washington, D.C. Its CEO, Jack Nimitz, shares a last name with Chester Nimitz, commander of the Pacific Fleet during World War II. In Ohio, Assistant Attorney General Brad Tamaro says the USNVA seems like the right organization at the right moment.
I think at this time in our history, there is a strong patriotic feeling. There's a strong desire to help the veterans that are coming back from Afghanistan and Iraq.
The charity has been recognized by the Department of Veterans Affairs and granted tax-exempt status by the IRS. 41 states allowed the association to operate after it files registration documents and keeps them current year after year. Though these papers list scores of officers, in truth, one man is behind it all, Commander Bobby Thompson. Thompson says he's a retired Navy lieutenant commander with a background in intelligence. He hires Helen McMurray to be the USNVA's attorney, and she believes in him 100%.
No one loved this country more than he did. No one was a greater patriot. No one talked more about liberty and freedom and his appreciation for it than him.
The charity touts an 80-year history, but Thompson first files registration documents in the early 2000s, not long after showing up in Tampa, Florida.
When he first started off, there wasn't a whole lot of money coming in, and he was doing everything by himself. And it wasn't until he hired those professional fundraisers that things really seemed to take off.
The telemarketing firms Thompson hires will eventually help his charity bring in millions. They are allowed to pocket an astounding 85% of what they raise, and they don't ask many questions about Commander Thompson.
If you want to look at it with a jaundiced eye, so to speak, you could say they were being paid a lot of money to do what they were doing. They asked a question, they got an answer, the answer seemed legitimate, and they didn't dig any deeper.
As a former Ohio Assistant Attorney General, McMurray once went after charity cheats. Now she works for nonprofits and telemarketers, helping them to clear regulatory hurdles.
Bobby Thompson calls me up and he said that, these gosh darn regulators just keep trying to tell me what to do. He was the most passionate person I have ever heard talk about these issues on anything with anybody ever. I mean, when you're paying a lawyer hourly, you don't sit there and talk for hours and hours, and that's what he did.
McMurray says she's not the only one to hear the commander's self-serving, anti-regulatory message.
He regularly interacted with different important political people. The same message is that, we should be able to do what we want, whenever we want to do it, however we want to do it. That's our right.
As the U.S. NVA grows into a multi-million-dollar operation, Thompson becomes a big-time donor to politicians, most of them Republicans. The commander has his photo taken with presidential candidates John McCain and Rudolph Giuliani, Speaker of the House John Boehner, Presidential Advisor Karl Rove, and President George W. Bush. He's not afraid to share these pictures with others.
He was trying to show he was a big shot, that he had a lot of pull with people due to his position with the U.S. NVA.
By 2009, tax returns say the U.S. Navy Veterans Association has brought in close to $100 million.
It was a money-making business. He had money coming in hand over fist. If he had not had that altercation with the reporter, he would have kept taking the money.
Next, journalists ask, who is the man behind this money-making organization?
There wasn't anything. He might as well have landed in Tampa on a spaceship from Mars.
In August 2009, investigative reporter Jeff Testerman is on his way to see Bobby Thompson about a donation he's made to a local politician in Tampa, Florida.
My expectation was that I would talk to this retired Navy guy, and I'd have a nice quote for the bottom of my story, about this county commissioner. It didn't go like that at all.
When Testerman gets to the commander's home, it hardly seems a fitting place for a retired Navy officer running a multi-million-dollar charity.
He was stuck in a hole across from a cigar factory with barbed wire around it. If you're looking to kind of keep a low profile, no better place.
Thompson has his apartment on one side of his duplex and the office from which he runs his charity on the other. His windows are covered with an odd mix of stickers. Inside, he scrawls bizarre messages on nailed-up boards. And in the kitchen, he's said to keep tequila by the caseful.
This guy was no dummy. And yet, the place he's living is a dump. He might have a little bit of a screw loose, He became openly hostile, aggressive. It basically threw me off his property.
Intrigued, Chesterman returns to his office and discusses the strange encounter with the newspaper's head researcher, John Martin.
I said, you know, I just went over to see this guy, and this Lieutenant Commander Bobby Thompson was just all over me, like a vulture on roadkill. You know, what do you think?
They think it's time to dig deeper and begin by looking at the association's at times rambling website. Among 85 names they find connected to the charity, one sticks out, that of the association's listed CEO.
Jack Nimitz, this famous Navy name. Let's find him, you know, let's call him and find out what's going on. And Jack Nimitz was nowhere to be found.
Over the next few months, they continue searching and get similar results.
They were supposed to have a board of 12 people. They were supposed to have 85 officers in state chapters around the country. They were supposed to have 66,000 dues-paying members. We never found anything except Bobby Thompson.
But even information on Commander Thompson is elusive. He's like a man without a past.
The sort of background that real people like me, have. There wasn't anything. He might as well have landed in Tampa on a spaceship from Mars.
Chesterman discovers that the purported Navy lieutenant commander has no military record. He's not the only one finding inconsistencies. At a breakfast meeting, attorney Helen McMurray asks Thompson about holes in his record, and he offers a surprising explanation.
The reason why he didn't have any current information on file was because he was actually working for the CIA, except it was black ops, and that this was a continuation of his military intelligence days and had to kind of remain somewhat invisible.
His lawyer doesn't know what to make of the early morning confession.
Considering he was finishing up his fourth Bloody Mary by the time he finished the story, I didn't really think much of it. But he had so many connections that worked out. It made a little bit of sense.
In their reporting, Chesterman and Martin dig into these connections. They see that while Thompson lives in poverty, he has donated hundreds of thousands of dollars to various politicians. The reporters wonder what they've stumbled upon and come up with three theories. First, Thompson is a lone wolf on the run from the law who created the association in order to survive. Second, the professional fundraisers are really in charge, and Thompson works for them.
And the third theory is Thompson the tool of a pretty much right-wing group? I mean, sort of right of the Tea Party. We, to this day, I don't know which theory is actually the correct one.
Ohio Attorney General Mike DeWine received $1,000 from Thompson in 2006. He offers a simpler explanation for the con man's seemingly high-profile connections.
I'm sure the President of the United States had no idea who this guy was. It was probably at a fundraiser where he'd given some money. Both parties do that. It's not unusual. And it's just kind of the nature of, politics is you have to raise a lot of money.
In March 2010, after 7 months of investigating, the St. Petersburg Times publishes a series of articles about Thompson's Navy vet scam. Weeks later, a number of states across the country open investigations. Prying eyes are turning Thompson's criminal world upside down, threatening to expose the true story of his hidden past. Next on American Greed, a U.S. Marshal's worst nightmare, tracking an ex-intelligence officer who goes underground.
Every single lead that we uncovered just led to another false identity. This was somebody who was highly trained and highly experienced.
For years, Bobby Thompson has been running a fake veterans charity from this rundown duplex in Tampa, Florida. He's been aided by professional telemarketers who make millions by asking donors for money and asking the commander very little about the charity. Now, a series of articles has finally forced them to dig deeper. In June 2010, one telemarketer calls Thompson to Manhattan to give him the chance to prove there's more to the charity than just him.
The articles say there are no managers of this organization, there's no officers, there's no trustees. Okay, produce them.
Miraculously, Thompson brings two supposed board members with him. But there's a problem. They were appointed just days earlier.
These two purported new board members made everybody feel even worse than they were before. And so the next morning we got a communication from the attorney and they said, we're done. And I never heard from Bobby Thompson ever again.
Since starting the U.S. NBA, prosecutors say Thompson has siphoned off approximately $3 million meant for veterans. After the ill-fated meetings in New York, the commander begins hitting ATMs. Then he heads up the coast to Boston, Massachusetts. While trying to stay ahead of investigators, he hardly seems repentant.
After he went on the run, he started out trying to create new charities. He created an organization on paper called the Plymouth Rock Society, and he created an organization called Quakers Penn's Landing, both of them religious organizations.
In Ohio, donors handed over millions to Thompson's fake charity. And in October 2010, authorities there indict him on charges of racketeering, money laundering, and theft. But Thompson is nowhere to be found, and putting him in cuffs won't be easy.
Normally when we get a fugitive case, a police agency comes to us and says, go find this person. Well, in this case, they said, go find a person, we don't know who he is.
It turns out that the name Bobby Thompson is nothing more than a stolen identity. Bill Bolden leads a team of U.S. Marshals from Cleveland, Ohio, after they take on the hunt for the mystery man in late 2011. They begin their search with 3 stolen identities their fugitive has used: Bobby Thompson, Elmer Dozier, and Ronnie Britton. As they dig deeper, this list grows longer.
We would uncover an identity, and that would lead us to another identity. Then we'd try to investigate that identity, and it would overlap with another identity. We thought we were chasing Jason Bourne. The guy was a ghost.
Many of these identities were stolen from Native Americans living on the Navajo reservations of the Southwest. What's more, some were set up years before Thompson's crime came to light. Marshals realize they're not dealing with a regular fugitive.
Well, he's good at what he is doing. He knew how to cover his tracks. Obviously, he was trained, or he trained himself to be very good at hiding from the law.
Eventually, the search leads marshals to an apartment their fugitive has rented in Providence, Rhode Island. Though the commander has already skipped town, the team hunting him learns another name he's using: Anderson Yazzie.
There was only one Anderson Yazzie in the country. That identity was so unique that it was very, very easy for us to track.
Next on American Greed, investigators zero in and make a crucial discovery. In early 2012, a man with a limp shows up in Portland, Oregon, where he finds a room in Celia Moore's boarding house.
He told me his name was Kenneth Don Morset. And he said, don't call me Ken. My mom called me Kenny when I was growing up, and I don't like it. Just call me Don.
Morset claims to be a retired cop and a consultant for the Boeing Company. Often working on a computer in his room, Moore says he was an ideal tenant, as long as she avoided one topic of conversation.
Well, his politics were very, very far right-wing, and he said he was a creationist and just very far right.
Morset lives quite frugally, taking some meals at a homeless shelter and existing on Pepsi, string cheese, burritos, and ramen noodles.
It's an amazing amount of lunches, like a man who was going to stay for a while. I thought he was staying a while.
Outside the house, Morset spends time visiting a rented storage locker.
Well, he mentioned that he'd been married for 35 years and that it was a very ugly divorce and that he didn't want his wife to know where he was. That if she found him, she would take his money away. Now I realize that he was worried that the U.S. government would find him, not his wife.
Not far from Moore's home, Morset makes credit card purchases under a name that U.S. Marshals have keyed in on, Anderson Yazzie. On the night of April 30th, 2012, it's been 2 years since reporters exposed Commander Bobby Thompson's Veterans Charity as a scam. That night, he sits down at Biddy McGraw's Irish Pub on Portland's northeast side. Sitting next to him is someone who has just arrived in town. It's one of the men tracking the scam artist, Deputy U.S. Marshal Bill Bolden. Hoping to find clues inside their fugitive's home, they wait and follow him, slowly.
We were not going to arrest him right away. We wanted to find out, number one, who he really was, and we were looking for what we were calling the Bank of Bobby Thompson.
As he approaches his front door at 10:30 p.m., marshals cuff him. They finally caught the man who reeled in millions claiming to help those in uniform. But who is he?
We asked him his name. Sir, what is your name? His response was, I invoke my Fifth Amendment rights. I'm not going to tell you my name.
Though their shadowy figure is tight-lipped, he's carrying 3 separate wallets, each containing a fully fleshed-out identity. In one, they find a business card for a storage facility with a unit number written on it. The marshals head there, not sure of what they'll find. Inside, they see 2 suitcases.
It's just stacks of birth certificates.
One contains a virtual workshop of fake ID materials.
These things is 94.
Do they match any of our names?
Kaz Anderson, Arthur Barillo, Kenneth Morset. Whoa! God!
And inside the second bag?
Oh, my God. Oh, hundreds. These are hundreds. How much? It's the mother load. This is, we joked. We said, hopefully this storage unit is the Bank of Bobby Thompson, and this is it. We're talking, these are mostly hundreds. 50s, hundreds, there's obviously a lot of 20s as well, but this is more money than I've ever seen in one spot.
The team takes the loot to a secure location, running it through cash counters, anxiously waiting for the final tally.
2,800.
28?
Yeah.
981, 650.
Just under a mil.
It's a huge haul, but it's just a fraction of the millions that prosecutors will later say the commander pocketed. Across town, landlord Celia Moore makes one more interesting discovery in her tenant's rented room. A DVD of the film Catch Me If You Can.
He thought he was like the guy in the movie, and nobody was ever going to catch him, and he was going to keep going and doing what he was doing. Because with $1 million, he could have disappeared across the border the next day. But instead, he was staying and doing it all over again.
The marshals prove they can catch their man. But when they lock him up in Ohio, where he's facing state charges related to the USNVA scam, he still refuses to say who he is and signs his name with an X. Pete Elliott, U.S. Marshal for the Northern District of Ohio, isn't too concerned.
I thought for sure we were going to find out his true identity once we put his fingerprints in the national system.
But it's not that easy. When they search for fingerprint matches, nothing comes up in the U.S., Canada, or through Interpol.
I've been in law enforcement 30 years, and I've never seen that before. We had no clue who Mr. X was.
For 5 months, Mr. X sits in a cell, leaving Elliot and others wondering who he is.
I always felt that Bobby Thompson was probably somebody that did a similar crime in the past, but was never arrested for it, because if he's arrested, his fingerprints would have been in our national system.
To check this theory, in September 2012, Elliot fires up his computer.
I started Googling missing Navy vets, most wanted military fugitives, and also most wanted fraud fugitives.
What he finds is a story that would be unbelievable were it not true. Next on American Greed, his past catches up to him. Mr. X's true identity revealed.
He just was strange, and it only got stranger as the conversation went on.
When Marshal Pete Elliott starts searching for the true identity of Mr. X, he has no idea that the story of the Navy Vets charity scam is about to become even more bizarre. Among the results he finds is a wanted poster for a fraud fugitive from the 1980s named John Donald Cody.
So the first thing that popped out to me was a picture on the far left-hand side of John Donald Cody from 1980, and he had a pompadour hairstyle. And Bobby Thompson from 1990s and 2000s, he has a pompadour hairstyle.
Elliot notes other similarities between the man on the wanted poster, Cody, and the man in custody, Thompson. The fugitive, Cody, has no tear glands. Thompson leaves bottles of eye drops in his room in Portland. Cody is a former Army intelligence captain. Thompson claims to be a Navy intelligence lieutenant commander. Cody has a Harvard law degree. Thompson is taking an active role defending himself in the Navy veterans case.
Give us a breakdown, Mr. Britton, of what you were doing in 1997.
So all these things started adding up, but nothing's exact. I could be as right as I could be wrong.
To prove that the man arrested for stealing millions is actually John Donald Cody, Elliot needs his fingerprints. When he calls an FBI agent working Cody's old case, he learns that the Bureau has a set of his prints that were never entered into the national database.
I don't know why they were not in the national system. The bottom line is, if they were in the national system, then we wouldn't have spent 5 months trying to identify who he really was.
When Elliot receives a copy, he has them triple-checked against Mr. X's prints. Then he pays the Navy vet scammer a visit in his cell.
I go, "We uncovered who you are, John Donald Cody," and he just looked at me with a smile on his face, and that was it.
Elliot has figured out the mystery man's true identity. But how Captain Cody became Commander Thompson is a story that still leaves him guessing. While many of his classmates protested the Vietnam War, John Donald Cody followed the call of duty. When he graduated from Harvard Law School in 1972, Cody was a reserve Army officer with a specialty in military intelligence and a top-secret clearance.
He was intelligent. He had all the opportunity you could want. It seemed like everything would have been on the up and up for him.
Cody's military records show him working civilian jobs at a variety of top-notch law firms in the early 1970s. They also include an offer letter from 1974 for a job with an obscure Defense Department office in Washington, D.C. Cody and a person once listed publicly as an employee of the office say it was a cover for CIA agents. Cody will later say he worked for the agency starting in 1972. The CIA declined to comment on his claim.
Whether he ever had any contact with the CIA, I have no clue. There's just no way for us to know that.
In 1977, Cody's records say he's in the Philippines attending graduate school. In 1979, the year he leaves, His employer is listed as U.S. Government Duties Classified. That same year, he returns to the U.S. and sets up his own law firm in an unlikely place, Sierra Vista, Arizona. It's a dusty town along the Mexican border and is home to an Army intelligence base where Cody once trained. In Sierra Vista, he befriends Terry Cereso, who gets to know him as a fiercely liberal Democrat.
He had a picture of Bobby Kennedy on the wall behind his chair in his office. He wanted equality for people, and he was willing to fight for it.
One of Cody's secretaries, Diane Shaughnessy, says this philosophy carries over to the way he treats his clients, many of them indigents.
Everybody was important. One was not better than the other, and he fought hard for everybody.
Representing clients in both criminal and civil matters, Cody racks up many courtroom victories. While Cody has his law office, as a reservist, records say he also does part-time legal duty at the intelligence base in town. Performance reviews from 1980 call him a superior officer with a high degree of integrity. This is a far cry from the Cody that former prosecutor Dennis Lusk knows around the same time.
Honesty meant nothing to him. Ethics meant nothing to him. Candor to the court meant nothing to him if it meant getting ahead with his clients.
Here at the Bisbee Courthouse, Lusk prosecutes many of Cody's clients. He says Cody viewed him and other prosecutors through a distorted lens.
No matter how routine the case was, it was the worst case of prosecutorial misconduct and overstepping, and we were trying to stomp him under the Nazi boot. And that was a term he used fairly frequently over the course of time that I knew him.
In legal filings on behalf of his clients, Cody seems at times unhinged. Signed with a strange scrawl, he references Adolf Hitler and compares Lusk to a KGB agent.
As time went on, he seemed more and more radical, almost to the point of being an anarchist.
Cody lives at this simple apartment complex, and over the years, friends notice he's growing increasingly paranoid. In 1981, he tells a reporter he fears prosecutors may be trying to kill him.
Did he have a personality disorder? I don't know.
In late May 1984, Cody meets Cereso at the Sari Gulch Saloon and tells her he's involved in a secret mission.
There were a lot of drugs coming in across the border. He felt there were official people who were perpetuating it, and he wanted to bring them down. But he said, if I can't accomplish this, I will have to disappear.
On May 21st, 1984, Cody says he's leaving town on unexpected business.
I had no idea that this would be the last day that I would ever see or hear from him.
I was perplexed. I thought John was trying to do something good, and it went bad.
But in the days to come, another story will come out. At the Bisbee Courthouse, Cody has been held in contempt after he allegedly lied to a judge. He has skipped town with nearly $100,000 stolen from his clients and left his Corvette at the Phoenix airport, unlocked, with the keys in the ignition. In 1987, Cody is indicted on federal fraud charges related to the theft from his clients in Arizona. The FBI poster that Pete Elliott will eventually find says Cody is also wanted for questioning in an espionage investigation. The FBI tells American Greed that national security precludes them from talking about Cody's case. So what made Cody run? Prosecutors in Ohio say his advancement in the Army Reserves was not going as he might have hoped. But a definitive cause remains elusive.
There's nothing in his military records that indicates anything right off the bat that would say, this happened and therefore he's gone. And that's the big question mark.
It's not the only one. After leaving Arizona in 1984, Cody remains underground until he emerges in Florida in 1998 as the highly connected commander Bobby Thompson.
There's a big block of time where no one has been able to determine what Thompson was doing in that 15-year period.
How did he feel so comfortable walking into the White House while he is an FBI wanted fugitive? I still think there's a lot about John Donald Cody that we just do not know.
Next on American Greed, from his jail cell, Cody offers up an intriguing explanation for his Navy vet crime.
How did I drop into a Tom Clancy novel? I mean, that's what came in my mind.
As John Donald Cody heads to trial for running the Navy Vets charity scam, he digs into his past as a Harvard-trained lawyer, filing scores of handwritten motions. In these, he says that he worked for the CIA beginning in the 1970s, that the agency subjected him to hypnosis and psychotropic drug treatment, and even claims that until 2012, he was working for them as a non-official cover officer.
We can't say whether he was a CIA agent or whether he never was a CIA agent. According to the records, he was a lawyer, and that's what he was. That's what the records say.
While running his fake charity, Cody donated hundreds of thousands of dollars to politicians. He claims the U.S. Navy Veterans Association was not a criminal enterprise, but a U.S. intelligence community, White House, and Republican Party manipulated operation.
I was taking orders. Higher-ups were telling me that to do this, and I was, following orders and this sort of thing. He put that out there.
Attorney Helen McMurray remembers that breakfast meeting when Cody downed multiple Bloody Marys and told her the association was tied to the CIA. She still wonders if his story is one she can dismiss 100%.
I can't. And quite frankly, the fact that when they arrested him and his fingerprints did not turn up in any database, it really makes you question.
But prosecutors see it another way.
It sort of goes against what would be in the, I would guess, the Spy 101 manual to say, I'm a super secret spy, but by the way, here's a picture of me shaking hands with the President of the United States.
What's more, they say Cody's cloak and dagger justification for running his fake charity is a moot point.
Even if he would have been the James Bond of Ohio, there's no exemptions that allow a federal officer of any kind to come into the state of Ohio or any other state and break state laws at their own will or at the command of someone else.
In September 2013, Thompson's Navy Vets charity fraud trial gets underway here at the Cuyahoga County Courthouse in Cleveland, Ohio. In his opening statement, Cody's attorney, Joseph Patitus, hints at a defense involving Cody's claimed CIA career.
You're going to have to ask yourself, how does he get that close to the President of the United States?
The prosecution presents its case first and calls 42 witnesses. As they finish, things turn strange. Those in the courtroom hear the defendant in a nearby holding cell banging his head against a wall. Days later, he shows up looking disheveled.
The magnitude of the evidence that was presented against him was coming home. It was a ploy for a mistrial, again to try to manipulate the system.
After months of hinting at a defense involving his claimed CIA career, Cody refuses to testify, and his lawyer calls no witnesses in his defense.
I think he didn't have any defense. There was nothing that he really could say. Once you take the stand, you open yourself up for all kinds of cross-examination.
The jury needs only 3 hours before they find Cody guilty of racketeering, theft, money laundering, and identity fraud charges. 1 month later, Judge Stephen Gall sentences him to 28 years in prison. He also orders the one-time Army captain to spend every Veterans Day in solitary confinement. Now, Cody sits here at an Ohio prison where he could spend the rest of his life. To this day, many are left with questions about Cody's past, about his ability to hide in plain sight, and about his reason for stealing millions while living a life of poverty.
The game was what it was all about to him. The ability to walk into the White House with a fake ID, knowing that he was already a fugitive when he did that.
One thing about John Donald Cody, he always has to be the smartest guy in the room, no matter what room he is in.
He may have been the smartest person in the room most of the time, but somewhere along the line, he got twisted, he got turned, and just dropped off the deep end. And when he dropped off the deep end, he went full bore.
This story went from a dilapidated, rundown duplex, and it went all the way to the White House. What's going on here? I still don't know the answer.
In Portland, marshals found close to $1 million, but it's only a fraction of the $100 million Thompson/Cody said he raised for veterans. What happened to the rest?
A lot of this money really hasn't been accounted for. And I don't know if anybody knows, aside from Thompson, where it went.